So the next experiment, and this is actually for lesson 1, and they will do it after your egg drop demo, is called the coin drop. Remember, they just learned about inertia, or the law of inertia if you want to actually give them the first full statement in Newton's first law. So whichever one you're comfortable with, either just inertia by itself or Newton's first law. If you want to jump into it to the first day, that's totally fine. Danae, why don't you tell us what you have in front of you?
So I have a glass cup, I have a piece of sandpaper, about the same size as a playing card.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need me to hold it up? Playing card.
Mm-hmm.
And then a plastic water bottle cap, a bead, a button, and a penny, a nickel, a dime, tiny piece of gauze, paper clip, and just a random piece of paper.
Okay, and you should know that the cup has to be pretty stable and pretty heavy, so a ceramic cup works, or a glass cup. You should not use a paper cup or a light plastic cup even. So again, something with a little bit of weight. The initial experiment is going to start with the playing card, so you go ahead and put that on top of the cup, and a coin, so any of the coins.
I'm choosing the dime.
Okay. In the materials list, you'll see a bunch of random other items, but you can change those out to whatever you have available. They should be kind of weighted. Well, no, they don't have to be weighted actually. Oh. So there should be a variety of shapes and sizes and weights. Don't tell the students why, just give them kind of a random collection of household items. Okay, so what the handout is going to tell her to do is to flick the card out from underneath the coin, almost like we flicked the pie tin out from underneath the egg in the opening experiment. But before she does that, what does she have to do? What do you have to do? We're practicing 2 things. Before you actually do the experiment, we always want you to predict. And the object we're going to focus on is the dime, okay, the coin that you chose. What do you think is going to happen when you flick the card out from underneath the dime?
Well, based on what I learned in the egg drop lesson, I think that the gravity will keep the dime where it is, and flicking it will make, and adding force to the side of it will just slide it out from under it and the coin will drop in. That's my prediction.
So what's that called when we know that the coin, which is just sitting there, is going to want to keep on sitting there? What was that word? Do you remember?
Inertia?
Inertia, yeah. If you could get your students to do that, make connections to the demonstration that they just saw you do for them, that is so great. So making connections is important, not just in the debrief, but the opening and during their actual experiments. So when you circulate, you should ask them these kinds of questions. Did you make your prediction? What do you think is going to happen to the coin? Why? What do you remember from our demonstration, and what's that called? So as much as you can, activate their prior knowledge, but also review things that they just learned. So go ahead and do the experiment, flick out the card. So what happened?
It fell in like I predicted.
Yay, so your prediction was correct. And do it again so I can see a closer shot.
Okay.
So again, it's balanced on top of the cup, and flick it evenly out. Yay!
Yay!
So, what we're going to teach them again during this unit, aside from making predictions, is changing one variable. Do you know what a variable is today?
Yes.
What is it?
It is one aspect of an experiment that you would change or keep the same.
So we want to remind them that to make it a true test, they can only change one thing at a time. So what do you want to change with your experiment?
I think I'd like to change to the sandpaper.
Okay.
And I'll keep my dime.
And you're going to make a prediction. So what did you change, and why did you want to change it?
Well, I changed it to the sandpaper because there's it's a different surface. It's a little bit rougher, or a lot more rough than the card. And I'm just wondering if it's going to take the dime with it when I flick it.
Okay.
Because there's more friction there.
Oh, you just said friction.
I did.
What's friction?
Friction is kind of, the best way I can explain it is it's a surface that slows down, I don't know, the effects of force, but I don't know if that makes sense.
It's a surface that slows down something that's
moving.
Moving, yeah. Okay, so Danae, obviously, as a mini scientist, your kids may or may not know friction. And I actually did not include it in the lesson plan that this is an experiment about friction as well as inertia, but it actually is. That's something that we want them to come up with themselves. Okay. So what she just did, and I did not prompt her to do it, was say, that looks different because it's a rough surface. I want to see what's going to happen. And that's what we want to create with the students, a curiosity and this kind of walking towards inquiry, which is where they need to be with the science fair process. But again, don't mention science fair, don't even mention friction by the time they're doing this experiment. Just ask them what they're doing and why they're doing it, and ask them to explain their reasoning behind their choices. And she just did it perfectly. And again, we didn't prompt her. Okay, so go ahead. You have the sandpaper.
I have the sandpaper, same dime, same cup. Okay,
Awesome.
Ready?
And same force.
Same force. Same fingers, everything. Ah!
Yay!
It still worked.
Did you say that you wanted it to go straight down, or did you say you thought it would fly out with the sandpaper?
I thought it might take the penny or the dime with it. I thought it might fly out with the sandpaper.
Oh, so it didn't.
It didn't. So maybe this level of friction has no effect on this type of inertia that we're talking about.
Okay, maybe. Do we know for certain?
Well, we just tried it and it still works. So it's not maybe, it didn't have any effect.
Okay.
So
What do you want to test now?
This time I think I'll go back to the card and I want to try this gauze.
Okay, so why are you choosing gauze rather than the coin?
Because it's a complete opposite in the sense of it's really lightweight versus somewhat heavier, and then the material itself is really, I don't know, it's not as hard. It's not hard material, it's soft material, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
So one way you can look at it is that you're testing whether weight is going to affect the response of the object.
Yes.
Okay? But also texture as well. So like you just said, maybe friction has to do something with it.
Yeah.
So go ahead and test it.
Okay. Ready?
Oh!
It took it with
It
it.
took it with it, wow! So why do we think that happened?
I'm wondering if the weight, it just, and I think it's the weight, it totally affected that when I used the force, it just went along with it. I don't know.
What's something else that you have in your table that you can test to see if it's weight?
I have a piece of paper.
Okay, why don't you try that?
Okay.
Again, we're focusing on the object, so we have the same card, the same force, which is why I should explain, we asked them to do the finger flick, because usually when you flick your fingers, you're applying the same force every single time. But one variable they could change if they wanted to was instead of flicking out the card, to pull it out. Don't tell them that. If they actually think of that and want to do it, let them.
Okay.
So you have the paper.
Okay, so I got the paper, the card, and the cup. Ready?
Oh! So it actually fell straight down. So, you know, we don't have exact weight measurements. We don't really know how heavy the gauze is as opposed to the paper, but just doing kind of empirical observations, looking at it, you would think that they should have the same response, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Because this has holes too, I think that, or it's holy, I think that maybe air too kind of got caught up in it, whereas this is it's a solid piece, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Well, we didn't give you the handout, but the students do have a handout in front of them, and as they're doing these tests, she would write that down. So what you just said, this is a little holy, it has holes, so maybe air goes through it and it has a different response. She would put that into her chart. Then when you do the debrief and you share out and you ask the students what observations they had, hopefully she raises her hand and says, wait a minute, I was testing it out and the gauze didn't do what we expected it to do based on our understanding of inertia. So something else is happening there. Do you have to explain it then? No, unless you actually know what it is. But that actually comes into lesson 3 or 4 when we talk about air resistance. So you actually almost said it, which was really impressive.
Air resistance.
Okay, so let's try something else.
Okay, so
Let's stick with the card.
okay, then maybe I'll do a bead.
And what do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I don't know. I think that the bead is like the egg, so it's round, and the egg dropped, where it should have. So I think it'd be the same thing. It'll just drop straight into the cup.
Okay, go ahead and perform it.
Okay.
And
it worked. Yes.
Okay, is there anything else you want to try, or do you think you have a good enough understanding of it so far?
I do have one thing I want to try.
Go ahead.
So I want to try these two things.
Okay.
And see what happens, because I think that this is going to get stuck to the sandpaper.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens.
So you're going to apply the same force?
Same force, but different items.
Okay.
I was right.
You were right. Okay, and what was your explanation about the sandpaper before? You said that because it's rough, it's going to create something. What
it's
did you
going
say?
to create friction.
Okay.
The surface of this created friction, and it latched onto this particular item. And I think it's because of the weight and the material versus the first time I did it. It was a different weight, a more solid material, or a harder material.
So, did we test the paper on top of the sandpaper yet?
No.
Why don't you do that and see what happens?
Okay.
Did the paper fall straight into the cup last time?
It did with the card. Yes.
So do you think it's going to fall into the cup with the sandpaper?
I think the friction will keep the paper on it.
Okay.
And I don't think it will fall into the cup. So.
What happened to it? Where?
It fell.
Oh, yeah.
So the paper went with the sandpaper.
Okay.
Yeah. So my prediction about friction was right.
Yay! So your students might be at different places. They may not even go ahead and talk about friction, but again, just go with where they are and go with where you are. So if they did it and you actually don't know what the explanation is, that's totally fine. It could just be a question that you guys ask and research for the next lesson. Okay, so we're done with this part of the experiment, but there's actually two parts to the coin drop. Are you ready for the next part?
Yes.
Take another card.
Okay.
And you are going to perform a magic trick. So it's not going to be on the card.
Oh, on the cup.
You're going to balance that card on your finger, on your index finger.
Like this?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, hello.
And this one, you might want to warn the kids or just warn yourself so you don't get really frustrated. It might take a few times to actually get it right, but it should work, and it does work. What you're going to do is balance a quarter on top of your card, on top of your finger.
Can I use a nickel?
Yeah, you can use a nickel.
So on top of this, add it to it?
Yeah, and just wait until it's balanced, so it's really sitting on your finger, it's not wobbling or anything.
Okay.
Now, based on what we know about the law of inertia, which is inertia period, what's the coin doing?
It is staying still.
So what does it want to do?
It wants to stay at rest.
Okay, so when you're going to flick out that card, what do you think is going to happen to the coin?
It'll probably just stay on my finger, hopefully.
Hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. So go ahead and flick it out.
Yeah,
you might be flicking it towards me.
This is my other hand. So I don't know if I flick as well.
Oh, it didn't work.
It didn't work. Okay,
but let me tell you, it should
again.
work, so we're going to try it again.
Okay.
So you want your
Let me try
writing
this
hand
other-
free.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
That's something we should have told you from the beginning.
That's
Sorry.
okay. We're learning. Okay. All right, let's try this again.
An even horizontal flick.
Even horizontal flick. Okay, that was horrible. Okay,
We're just going to keep going. I'm going to give you a quarter.
Okay.
Or do you want to get a quarter over there?
Yes, let me go get it.
You might want to tell the students to start with a quarter since it's a little easier to balance on their finger.
I really want to do this magic trick here.
It might take a while, but once you do it, the payoff is great.
Okay.
So flick however you see comfortable. but
Yeah,
it should
I'm
be-
trying to figure that out. I have to do it right here.
Okay. I'm going to give you one more hint. And there isn't... Flick from this side, out that way.
Should I?
So...
How should this be?
Oh, sorry, camera. Put the quarter on top of your finger.
Should the card? Does it matter
Leave the
how
card
the
like that.
card is? Okay.
It might... it shouldn't if you're an expert, but since we're all novices here, okay, flick from this side.
Okay. Dang it!
So I want you to make sure that you tell the kids to keep on going. It will work. They shouldn't get frustrated.
I'm not frustrated. I'm determined. Okay.
Okay, come over here. I'm gonna try it.
Okay.
You also have to be pretty calm, otherwise I had tons of coffee today. Okay, and you might want to wait until you have it balanced and you're not moving too much. And even flick. Gosh, Johnny! Okay, pause for a second, because we're both gonna practice